Well, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon in some places, and good extra morning to anybody that's watching on the West Coast. This is the Second Page Podcast. I'm Joseph Oswald. With me, as always, my co host.
Hey guys, good morning. I am Jay Martinez, and welcome to episode 6. And what's up, Steve? How are you?
What's happening, Captain?
Producer, captain, what are we going to call you
El
today?
Capitano.
El
El
Capitano.
Capitano.
Well,
Take what I can get when I can get it.
But yeah, guys, welcome to episode 6, our second show live. Thank you for the ones who are actually tuned in right now at the moment, and for
Like
all of you who'll be
Eugene.
watching it later.
What's up, Eugene?
yeah.
Eugene, what up? What up?
Yeah, we got
I think my
Chris,
wife is on. What's up,
Faye,
Yessie?
Raymond. Nice, everybody.
But yeah, okay. So obviously, without I don't think this is up for discussion. The biggest topic today will be the tax bill that was passed in the wee hour of the morning.
Like
This
a
morning,
thief in the night.
like a thief in the
Like a
night,
thief in the
and the implications, what's in the bill, what it means for the middle class, the next step moving forward, and will this actually make it a Trump's desk by Christmas, and then will it be written into law?
Spoiler alert: yes.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
did
we have
not-
to deal with reconciliation first, but we all know how that's probably going to
Yeah,
work
it's
out.
it's gonna pan out, and then aside from that, we're gonna touch on the Michael Flynn plea deal. He is snitching on the Trump administration now,
Gonna get stitches.
or it's, and then we're gonna talk about Trump's nationalist outright retweet, which pretty much pissed off everyone in the UK, or with any sense of
Well, so
Our-
the sun never sets on people pissed off at Trump tweets.
nope.
No.
And
You know,
I like that off the play of
that's good,
yeah. The
Well, I
sun
was
never sets
actually-
in the empire, right?
I was gonna say something about Michael Flynn. You know, he said he was a snitch, and the old moniker is that snitches get stitches, but in America they cost about $5,400 per stitch.
So you can't afford
You
it.
can't
I don't
really
know.
afford that.
Well,
It's
I
other
was gonna
jail
say
time.
that snitches get pardons.
That's
So
true. Actually, at this
there's
point,
that.
Yeah, they do.
snitches probably would get pardons.
But we will get into that in a minute. So, guys, how do you feel about the way that the bill was? Before we get into the bill in itself, it was passed at what, 2 in the morning?
Two in the morning. I was watching that live.
I tried to stay up and I quit an hour before. If I knew it was at 2, I probably would have made it, but I just got frustrated and I quit. But yeah, I mean, at 2 in the morning, all these men and women, 51 men and women, pretty much decided the fate of the middle class for the next 10 years. How do you feel about that passing that way in a republic, a democracy? I mean, is that the way things should be done?
Well, I mean, that's the way things are done according to the rules of the Senate and the House, and they're allowed to make their own rules according to the Constitution. So, one of the worst parts about it, and I think this is something that even Republicans brought up a lot when they were trying to pass the ACA, is that this is a nearly 500-page bill.
Yep.
That didn't even have enough time for the Joint Tax Review Commission that Congress had set up, the CBO. They didn't give anybody time to look this over, and they have handwritten amendments in the 11th hour. They ram this down people's throats, just telling you it's going to be good for you, it's going to be good for you, it's going to be good for you, like some parent trying to shove, the poison Kool-Aid down your throat while you're at the Jones camp in This is a bill that
I believe
people
that's
did-
where the term comes from.
yeah,
right?
it is. It is. And this is something that was shoved down everyone's throats that neither the Republicans in favor of it nor the Democrats, and the one Republican, Mr. Corker, thank you for at least holding your spine together. But,
He's not running. Again.
when he's not, well, he can't run without a spine.
And
so-
if he would have gotten his concession on the trigger, he would have been a yes vote. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
he's the only one they didn't appease.
they didn't need him.
Yeah, they didn't need him.
They
So
decided to
so,
sweeten the
yeah.
deal for other people.
And I guess to prove, to Steve's testament, they weren't heroes. We were kind of calling them a little
Yeah.
heroic a few weeks ago, and they're not.
Oh yeah.
And they proved that today. Yeah. So sorry for the naivete.
Hey, you too, Sarah Collins and Lisa Murkowski.
Yeah, we see you guys. We
Yeah, do you know what their concessions were? They wanted to drill in wildlife
Yep.
refugees, and they protect $10,000 of the state and local tax deductions, and for very low income people, their medical expenses can be written off as if that was something that
Yeah.
it should have never been in the first place. I mean, we're talking about the fact that this bill only passed because they made concessions again on a 500 some odd page document nobody had time to read. That along party lines they voted down in
an amendment to move
to
back,
Monday,
yeah.
just to give them time to read it. And they still voted it down because they need their win. They had to have something by the end of the year because they didn't care what the wrapping paper the Christmas present was in. They just wanted a present. They offset this with reducing some of the tax cuts that they originally planned and scaling back on some others. Notably, the alternative minimum tax, something that when Donald Trump's tax returns were leaked into the 2005 returns, probably by one of his ex-wives, We don't know.
I think Trump actually leaked that himself
Probably.
because that was the one where it showed he had to spend a lot of
He
money.
paid an alternative minimum tax, which is something to keep corporations and individuals from getting away with deducting everything. Like, people always talk about GE doesn't pay any taxes.
Yeah.
It's to prevent that kind of stuff. So instead of eliminating it completely, which
They
they're
doubled
going
it.
to, they just reduced it. They have it. The alternative minimum tax was lowered for individuals but kept the same for companies. And again, these are people that say that these companies should be able to write off their jets, should be able to write off new investments that they make. They should be able to write off every single expense that they make. But somehow average Americans whom they are billing this as a grand savior for are not allowed to write off anything. You can't write off your student loan deductions if you're a graduate student. You can't write off the stipend that they pay you for going to school. You can't write off your mortgage interest. You can't write off school supplies that you buy. They're going to double, if you're a teacher, they're going to try and say, oh, we're going to double your standard deduction,
So
but then they take
$500.
away your personal exemption.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Don't
what are they
forget
giving
salt.
anybody? Well, yeah, that's the thing that they used to get Susan Collins on board.
Well, so
was
one
by increasing it to 10,000 the limit.
One thing I want to point out here and to understand like what's happening here as to how they bought people off. Some things that are in this bill. There's an abortion law that reclassifies life at conception. What you're talking about in Alaska, they have a clause in there to drill for oil in the wildlife preserve.
Yep.
And here's the big one here. They have pulled the individual mandate from the ACA, which,
which was the backbone
right,
of
the
it
backbone,
when it
and
went to
this
the
will
Supreme
cause
Court.
about 13 million people to lose insurance.
Well, not
Lose
just that.
coverage.
It's not going to directly cause them to lose it. It's going to
Well,
take
but
away
if
the
you
money
can't
that paid
fund
for
it,
those that paid for the subsidies.
And that's the real point here, right? And we're talking about dynamic scoring, and it doesn't matter who scored this thing because the most conservative estimates say that this thing will cost $1.5 trillion.
Yep.
And they're calling it not a. They're saying that this bill will be deficit, not just deficit neutral, but
It'll pay down the debt.
right. It will pay down the debt,
And it's not.
but
I
here's
mean,
the
there's
problem.
no way.
Here's the problem with that. You don't know what effect a bill will have unless you tell me how you're going to pay for it. And if they're taking in $1.5 trillion less, they're going to have to cut something. And what will be the effects of those cuts? We don't know.
Well, that's why Trump starts off, the beginning of these sessions with the Senate by saying, and Paul Ryan saying, okay, we're going to go for entitlements next. So corporations get entitlements, they get handouts, but people don't get the things that we pay into. I mean, I hate it when people call things like unemployment or Social Security or Medicare entitlements because there are things that come out of my paycheck every single week. They come out of we pay into these systems so that we have access to them. They are safety nets set up for us, by us, for the government that we installed. And now they're just trying to find every way possible to shave away these things that protect people. At the same time, give all these protections, all these tax breaks and incentives to businesses, to corporations, to things like pass-through businesses, which Donald Trump's whole empire is built on these pass-through businesses where he doesn't directly own them, but he gets licensing fees, he gets rentals from his properties, he gets royalties. He basically sells out his name, which, I mean, he is a sellout, so it fits. But he basically does that, and that is one of the things that they got as a concession for this bill. They got the pass-through businesses to the...
It went from 17.6% to, I think, 23.
23%, yeah.
And that's what got Ron Johnson and Daines, I think his name was, on board, which they needed. And you know what? Look, to kind of pull this back a little bit and to kind of give some perspective of what this bill actually does, we will, I guess, across the board see an increase in after-tax income. So we'll see more money in our pockets across the board. But what they've done is that they've locked in the corporate tax rate at 20% for corporations. This is locked in. Forever, right?
Yeah.
And then our tax cuts for the middle class, quote unquote, start to expire and diminish every year after this year, and by 2025 will pretty much be gone. Meaning that our taxes are going to go up again, significantly. And what they're saying is that no, don't worry. Whoever's in Congress in 2025 will extend the benefits. Don't worry about it. But that's BS. This is in here because they know that this cannot pay for itself. This will increase the deficit by 1.4%. And again, like you said, that's very conservative figures. It could be more. And they know that if there was an automatic trigger, which was what Flake and Corker had wanted, that in case this bill in itself did not generate the revenue that is promised, that taxes would increase to offset that spending. But they know, they have to know that that's not going to happen, which is why they didn't want the automatic trigger. They're not going to extend this past 2025.
No,
Our taxes are going to go up.
and
So this is a short win for a long-term game plan for them that only benefits the rich, the corporations, and them. A very small percentage of Americans that benefit from this.
That didn't need the benefit.
That didn't need the
and
benefits.
they got
yeah.
where they are right now because of the way the rules were set up originally.
And it's really a disaster, and I don't even want to say that the constituents don't understand this. I mean, like we were talking about it before the show. This is at what, a 52% approval rating right now? I mean, disapproval rating. So obviously, a majority of Americans, including Republicans, don't think that this was a good tax bill. And regardless of all that, of the CBOs and all these agencies and their projections of what this bill will do, the GOP still shoved it down our throats. And I don't understand.
Well,
aside from greed, I don't understand why.
I can tell you why.
Why? Why, Steve?
Here's the thing. When the you have to understand what the goal of these parties are, right? This is why when the ACA passed, I wasn't in any doubt that it was going to pass. Like, the Democrats run to give people health care. Now, there is an argument to be made about how you do that and whether the government should be in the business of giving people health care. But that is what the Democrats run on and for. That is their mission and their goal. The Republicans run to give tax cuts to the wealthy. That's what they run for. So it was going to happen by the hook or by the crook.
Yeah, and to, I guess, continue off of that point, right? Isn't it a conservative almost ideal, like something that's paramount to them, to not, small government, right? You shouldn't want to increase the spending of the government, which is exactly what this is doing.
Oh, come on.
But no, I know.
Come on.
I know that
The Reagan era is dead. I think we
yeah,
covered that in episode 3.
Yeah, but I'm just saying by practice, I know that's not what they do, but that's what they intend, and that's how they run, and that's what they say they're all about is small government, less spending, blah, 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 blah. And this is exactly contradicting that. And again, aside from that, it doesn't help the people that voted for Trump. It's not in the best interest for the middle class, which is everyone in this room, and I'm pretty sure almost everyone who's tuned in right now.
That's what Dan
Yeah, I was just about to say. That's
Yeah.
what he was saying. I mean, how do you talk to people who basically are voting against themselves? And when we always talk about we live in a democracy, and again, we have to remember that it's a Republican democracy, not Republican in party, but in the way that it's set up. So much that we vote for representatives who then vote on our behalf. But now we've given these people, through various different things, when you talk about campaign finance reform, and when you talk about the way primaries work, we've basically abdicated our individual rights to a vote, our one person, one vote kind of mantra, and have now told these people, you're basically a whole bunch of little dictators. That whatever you say for the 2 years or the 4 years or the 6 years of your term, we're just going to let it go and you just do whatever you want. And then when that 2 years or 4 years or 6 years comes up, we'll decide, okay, do we really want to keep you? But that doesn't do anything because people like Mitch McConnell's in the world and the Chuck Schumers of the world continue to get reelected in gerrymandered districts where they have no chance of really losing their positions. So they can say all these things. They're not afraid of the one thing elected officials are supposed to be afraid of, and that's losing an election. You talk about things like what a conservative is supposed to be, what they're supposed to be. Nobody is supposed to be anything anymore. That's out the window when Donald Trump got elected president. Republicans are now under the Trump banner. He is their standard bearer, and if they go against him, then they're basically committing their own political suicide. Whether or not a Democrat supports people like Bob Corker or John McCain when he was voting down the Repeal Act, it doesn't matter what we think they were supposed to do because that old mantra of conservatism is gone. They don't care about raising the debt because they've seen us raise it year after year after year. We've seen the debt climb over $20 trillion and nothing bad has happened.
And an argument can be made that you really can't stop the debt from going up.
You can't.
I mean, right? We want to continue the way of life that we.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go to war with China to get rid of our debt,
and that's not going to happen.
Or
sell, at least not right now.
I mean, can we sell like a territory? Can we just sell Guam? Not that there's a.
Don't go after Puerto Rico right now. Yeah, not the right time.
I mean, well, let's say about this: the tax bill, the Republican version of the tax bill.
I'd vote sell Alabama.
Nah.
I want to see how they vote first.
I'll give you about 350.
350. But to Dan's point, right? If you want to combat this, if you want to see how people that vote against their own interests, there's a lot of propaganda going out there. And we've talked about this plenty. how depending where you get your news from, you're going to get a certain amount of spin, right? And there is spin out there being put by the GOP of how this will help the middle class and how it's not going to benefit the rich. And Trump is out there saying that this is not going to benefit him, which is complete BS. So I think maybe it's combating those myths and saying the truth about them, and maybe just saying it enough and pounding it in people's heads until they know that what they're being told is a lie. And again, with everyone out there yelling fake news, people might say that we're fake news, but the numbers are there. And these are organizations that this is what they do for a living. They break these bills down, and they're the ones that are giving us these figures. So, I mean, I don't think...
According to the GOP, those are partisan organizations.
But they're not.
The nonpartisan.
They're nonpartisan, yeah.
organizations.
Anyone that doesn't agree with you
is not...
partisan
yeah.
organization.
No, well,
Which is again,
whether you guys
that's
a
Fox
testament
News
to where we're
arguments.
at. But for example, we've already kind of talked about this, but there's the message out there is that the bill will pay for itself, and as we've already said, no, it won't. It's going to increase the deficit by 1.4 trillion.
I think the commission said that even if all their estimates are correct, it'll still add at least $1 trillion to the national debt, which is right about the limit where they can't pass a bill without 60 vote
Votes.
rule. So they need to keep it under a decade and under $1 trillion, or under the 100 billion a year, basically, which is
why they
set to
backed
be.
up the corporate tax cuts from 2018 to 2019,
Yeah.
right? So they think 1 year is going to offset that, and I don't
Well,
really.
it does. I mean, if you're talking about
yeah, they
$100
wanted
billion,
to-
I mean that's
So you're really
a lot
so you're
of money.
bringing it down by that 1 year, and
Yeah.
you think it'll make
and
it.
then and that puts it under their rules for how you pass a budget or any kind of a tax bill. Which, thank you, 16th Amendment, appreciate that. But you know how they play this off is they say things like, okay, the bill's going to pay for itself, and we're going to do that by eliminating all these loopholes for the middle class. Not to mention that 70% of the U.S. economy is driven by consumers. So who cares what they think, though, right? And most of the economy goes through L.A. and New York. That's besides the point. We talk about they put in the House version of the bill a 20% excise tax on goods manufactured in Puerto Rico.
What is
Right
an
after a hurricane,
what's an
excise
excise
tax
tax?
are taxes on imports, and basically treating Puerto Rico like a foreign country.
Okay.
Which, of course, they probably, I've heard it on the radio and too, they maybe the Republicans put this in there just as a little bargaining chip so they can say, oh, we'll get rid of that if you Democrats don't bitch, moan, and complain about this, that, and the other thing. But the point is that if it goes to a federal court, 9 times out of 10, any federal judge is going to say you can't put an import tax on goods from Puerto Rico. It's a U.S. territory. It technically should be treated the same way as a state. Now, I know that there's so many different things that are involved in that. It's a very unique status. But where do they get off even throwing something like that in there, except to say that the projection from this, whether or not it'll actually stay in the bill forever, the projection adds this much revenue. This much revenue to it. Whether or not
So
they'll
it
keep
helps the
doesn't
argument
matter.
for growth and how they're
Just helps
supposed to be
that
paying for it.
argument for growth and
I
how
don't
it's
know.
supposed to be paid for.
I think that they put things like that in there as a fuck you to the states and territories that don't help them.
Right.
They are weaponizing
LA and
this
New York,
tax
yeah.
plan.
It's
That's
absolutely
that's
It is
what they're
open,
doing.
yeah.
It adversely affects people in New York and California,
Which is
and it helps people in red states. Now, if you are, and it is also geared more towards like owners as opposed to people who work. So Ronnie Martinez asked, "How does this affect the middle class?" And you can answer
big
that
bro?
question. What's happening, Ronnie? But you can answer that question by looking at what is permanent and what is ephemeral in this bill.
Yep.
Right. Everything geared towards the middle class, it has a timed exit. Everything geared towards
Corporations is locked
are
in
permanent
forever.
And furthermore, you can look at this last minute amendment they added to it for pass through corporations, which
Penciled in. Literally penciled in.
literally penciled in
In cursive.
benefits literally Donald Trump.
You have that up there, right? You
I
have
do
the
have it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
on the screen now. These things are literally handwritten in cursive in the bill that says pass-through corporations. Like you can basically consider a publicly traded company a pass-through corporation, which means they will not have to pay the current tax rate.
They'll pay it as personal income.
They pay
Right.
as
Personal
personal
income.
They pay it as
which
personal
yeah.
income.
90% of Donald Trump's businesses
Right.
is, even though he should have gotten rid
And
of
they
them.
sweetened the pot again. It was at 17%
But
initially,
why
but
do
they had to
that?
bring it
Why-
up.
That is literally for billionaires.
And again,
But they
so-
say it's for the doctors and for the small
No,
mom
no.
and pops that are
No,
opening
they-
up businesses everywhere for some reason.
they
every
made
5
sure that
minutes.
lawyers, accountants, doctors aren't privy to this, by the way. And which kind of leads into the other point then, right? The whole conservative ideology is that corporations that the tax cuts will lead to businesses giving raises to their workers and distributing the money downwards. And it will not. It's never worked. It hasn't been proven to work. And I read an article this week earlier where corporations are actually excited about this because they've already said what they intend to do with that extra income. They're going to give it to their shareholders, to their they're going to invest it, they're going to save it, they're going to give it to their executives. And in the defense of corporations, they're not beholden to their consumers. They're beholden to the shareholders.
Also,
So
that's
they should do that.
But that's
And I
one
can't
more-
even be mad at
that's
them in
one
that
more-
sense.
That's one more point about this bill, right? Now you can make the argument that you can use dynamic scoring, and if you give the job creators, the unicorn job creators,
Yeah.
more money,
I like
that
that.
they will inherently create more jobs. If you give them a sexy tax rate to repatriate their money, that they will use that money and invest it in the economy. When we have seen over the last 8 years record profits for CEOs, you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
shareholders.
And where does that money
Going
go?
on. And all the wealth that has been created for the upper
1%, yeah.
the 1%,
Yeah.
right? They have not shown with all the record profits they have now that they were willing to create more jobs and reinvest in the economy,
Yeah.
right? There's nothing in this bill that incentivizes creating more jobs. There's nothing in there
doesn't.
that
That-
says,
and-
"Hey, we'll
and that
give
goes
you
to-
a preferred tax rate if you invest more."
Yeah, and that was an amendment that they tried to add in that was voted down again on party lines, where they said that, okay, if Democrats can get on board with this, you add this amendment in that says that if executive pay goes up after this tax break kicks in, that everybody below, all the workers, all the employees have to have an equally increased percentage. So if you increase the executive pay from a 30 million to 33, that's a 10% increase. So all of your workers need to get a 10% increase in their pay, which is exactly what they're saying it's supposed to do. But when you try to guarantee it, they say no, we don't want any part
Because
of
they
that.
know it's not going to happen the same way
And-
they don't
and
guarantee
you
the
did
trigger.
say earlier too that we're talking about repatriation of money. The Senate bill originally was going to eliminate that, but I believe it was included in the bill that American multinational corporations are going to be taxed on their overseas holdings, which is basically repatriation, which is something that I've said before that I agree with. I think they're hiding all this money offshore and they can't spend it because they have to leave it hidden over there or else it will get taxed. So give them an incentive to bring it back, put like a 5% tax on it, whatever, bring back $1 trillion. And then I'm like, okay, we can afford that. But then they just take the money and they'll throw it to the Pentagon. They'll throw it to the Congress. They'll give themselves a raise. I mean, the Senate votes to raise its own pay all the time. Congress votes to raise its own pay all the time, but they don't think anybody else deserves the same respect.
It comes
Yeah,
down
well,
to. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So one more thing, I think, again, to point out, you have to look at what the motivations for this bill are, and honestly, it wouldn't have been hard to write a more popular bill, right? So already the Obama administration wanted to bring the nominal corporate tax rate down to 28%. They're going down to 20, right? Just because it is literally a talking point that Trump had during the campaign,
Yep.
there's no real reason to say we need to go to 20. Because jumping down from
Was it just an
35
arbitrary number?
it is. I don't see
Okay.
it any other way.
It
There's
sounds
no,
not,
it
to
doesn't
get
make
even
mathematical
tens.
sense.
Yeah, I
Right?
did notice that a lot in the bill. There's a lot of even numbers now. There, when they're
Right.
rounding up to
That's
the.
the only simple thing about
Yeah.
the bill. If you say that the goal is to simplify the tax code, this does not do that.
500 pages.
And-
That's simple.
Yeah,
And
super
again,
simple.
The other part of this is, if we're looking at what what they're doing with the money, right? So you can say, okay, we are getting rid of the state and local tax deduction. We're getting rid of the mortgage interest deduction. That is going to gain revenue, right? But what are you doing with that revenue? Are you putting it into entitlements? Are you putting it into building roads and bridges? No. What you're doing is you're using that, literally taking money away from the middle class to give it to fund corporate tax cuts to offset the already deficit negative bill that you're posting. So you're
you
robbing
said-
from the middle class.
You just said something that just made me think of something here. And, we talk about this tax bill being weaponized and how it almost looks like it's attacking every single person that stood against or tried to stand against the Trump administration and bringing them in. When you eliminate things like the SALT deductions, the state and local tax, you're basically saying, okay, well, it's the state's fault for raising the taxes as high as they are. I mean, the state, municipal, and local taxes are local issues. They are state issues. The federal government didn't put the highest taxes on New York and California. Those states and local areas did that. When you eliminate those deductions, you make it less of an incentive for people to live, to buy, to stay there. So there's a double-edged sword on this one. One, it drives wealthier people to lower tax states, which happen to be more red states in general. You drive people from New Jersey to Pennsylvania, from New York to
Florida doesn't have a state tax.
Exactly. You send people start moving to Florida. Businesses move to Florida. They move to Texas. They move to these places where there's right to work laws, where they can fire anybody for whatever they want, and they keep their minimum wage as low as possible. So on that end, this tax bill is almost like like an emigration kind of thing, where they're forcing the population to move because they just can't afford to live places. On the other hand, by doing that, you also leave homes unsold, vacant properties, people that have invested, mutual funds, hedge funds, businesses that have invested in mortgage securities now will start losing money and not being able to sell these things. You have to foreclose because people can't afford them. You get whole blocks of houses that just remain vacant because you can't sell them because their property value itself is too high and the taxes are too high, and then you can't write off the taxes on your federal.
In blue states.
Blue states. And again, we keep doing these color things, and it's almost like we're on the brink of a civil war, but instead of it being North and South, we're talking about red versus blue. And I honestly believe that's something that this...
America versus Iron Man.
Well, I mean, if you want to put it into like
I like the analogy,
mythological, I'm not going to say imaginary because I don't want to offend the Marvel universe, but it's a mythological. They want it to be an us versus them kind of situation because that is what works for the GOP of now. It wasn't like that 20 years ago or 30 years ago. There was always like an us versus them, but there was a way to meet in the middle. There were always people willing to shake
it's almost
hands.
a way of financial gerrymandering.
It's financial gerrymandering on top of election.
So they're going after
our
votes, now they're going after her money.
Exactly. So they're going to shift people that way. They get the electoral college will be more balanced because the 2020 census is coming up.
Yeah.
That means all the numbers for what electoral votes each state gets will change. I mean, this is something that is one of those like tucked way in their little things, and I'm surprised it took me this long to even think about that. That's exactly what this will do. It will move populations. They will still be drowned out in the red. These people, even if they were Democrats and they're wealthy and they're just moving to save money, they're still not going to have as big an effect as they did when they were shoring up support in Democrat states. I know that everybody should have their chance to be on top, and liberal blue states shouldn't always be the guiding force in this country with regards to the Senate or the House, anything like that. But when you've got people who will cast votes in the Senate, people like the Roy Moores of the world and stuff like that, whose decisions will affect everybody. However, we, as the other 49 states people, are not allowed to give them our opinions. We're not allowed to interact with them. They won't listen to us if we do because, like, I only have to pay attention to my constituents. And we are stuck in a situation where these kind of tax bills will go through despite how unpopular they are because, like we said in the beginning, or rather I did, they're not afraid of losing their elections anymore. The only thing people are afraid of is being primary.
Yeah.
You'd be primaried if you don't do it, and that's all they care about.
And there's another unintended issue that might come out of this bill, and I read about it. Maybe you guys can throw in your insight. But there's there's some something making out the rounds out there saying that in the short term, we are going to see, again, more income in our pocket because of the tax reductions, right? And that's going to, spur more spending and more money into the economy, which in turn, some people are arguing that then the Federal Reserve is going to bring up the interest rates when there's more spending, which in turn, the interest rates being so low is actually why the economy is so good. So in an unwanted effect, this might actually, we all know it's going to cripple the economy because it's going to bring up the debt. But by bringing up the interest rates in the Federal Reserve and how people are borrowing money, and at that rate, it's not going to help the economy in the long term. It's going to spur growth. I mean, it's going to stop the growth. So how do you feel about that? Do you think that will happen? Do you think the Fed will react that way if more money is going to be? Yeah. But Janet Yellen's out. Yeah,
no, she's out in January or whenever the rest of her term's up, and she's going to be replaced by Trump's pick. I forget what his name
Yeah, I have no idea who his pick is.
Of course, it's a guy, and he doesn't care how good Janet Yellen's been doing.
She's been doing great. I have no idea why
one of the best Fed chairs that we've had in a long time, and this woman has kept everything in line. She does everything by the book, facts, numbers. Whereas the next people, anybody that Trump tends to pick, is just all emotion. All they do is what does my boss want me to do? And they have already signaled through at their last quarterly meeting that they see the economy improving enough, unemployment low enough to start raising key interest rates, and it's fractional, it's little bits by little bits.
But it
When you raise that
matters.
interest rate, it raises the cost of banks and businesses and whatnot to borrow from the Federal Reserve, in turn to loan that money out and then generate interest off of that. That's why you put money into a savings account, 1% interest at best. But every week I look in the newspaper and it's like a tenth of a point higher, tenth of a point higher. They all know what's coming. They know that the key rates are going to go up. I mean, it might not end up like the 90s where you had a savings account generating 12% interest. I mean, God, I would love to have lived back then. If I had opened a savings account back then, it'd be kind of like if I bought Bitcoin 10 years ago, I'd be a millionaire.
But long term, do you think then that would hurt or help the economy?
Absolutely, it's gonna. I mean, anytime you add to the debt, and I've been a liberal for some time, and as I get older, I slowly moving back towards the center.
Ditto.
I see a lot of things, and you start understanding things a little bit better. So I don't get upset when I see younger people, being like, "Oh my God, we're all gonna die," and the older people being like, "Calm down, nobody's gonna die. We've been here forever." And I see right in between that, and I see like, if you want to run America like a business, then you have to actually run it like a business. A business cannot survive with massive, massive debt unless you're someone like Donald Trump's business, where you just rely on bankruptcy protection.
Well,
Or when you run it like a home.
The
You wanna
digs
run-
are high this week,
Yeah,
huh?
you want to run something like your home. You don't spend more money than you have, and people get into credit card debt and they lose everything.
Which is the
And-
American way, you could say.
And I get that there are 5 major currencies in the world, and they just added the yuan a couple years ago. But the main currency, 90% of transactions are done in the U.S. dollar. So just like most politicians aren't afraid of losing their jobs because elections are so rigged at this point, we're not afraid of what's going to happen when our debt goes to $25 trillion. Most economists say that it's unfeasible for a country's economy to survive if it's more than 100% of its GDP in debt. And we're like 115%. I mean, our GDP is 15 trillion, we're 20 trillion in debt, and it's just adding on and adding on. And they don't care about fixing it. I mean, Republicans used to say that, conservatives used to say, let's do that, but every year they raise the debt ceiling. Every year they add more money. Every year they give the Pentagon money, whether they want it or not. And every year they decide that it's okay to be in debt because they'll just pay the interest on it. And they pay the interest on it, and that means every single American, every 350 million of us, whether we're a corporation or not, we are all responsible for that. And what is going to happen the day that bill comes due? I mean, is it one of the situations where you have to go to war to pay it off?
Yeah, but now we're getting into theoreticals now.
Well, you just asked a theoretical question.
I know, but I also want to avert going off on a long tangent of what ifs. But to bring this back around, also, I know I'm a little bit more optimistic. Steve's a little bit more pessimistic when it comes to this. You've been more right, but you've been more right for whatever it's worth. A couple of weeks ago, when because the House and the Senate really, really pushed this quickly. I mean, all of this has been done almost in a matter of a month. It just before Thanksgiving, this made its way out of the
It was less
the
than
Senate
2 weeks
bill.
in the House.
Exactly. So the point is, no one's really read it. No one really knows what's going on. And I think, Joe, I'm safe to say you might have thought that some of these people that have been opposed to Trump in the Senate would put a halt to this. Mainly maybe McCain, Murkowski, Collins, Corker, Flake. We thought, they could only afford to lose 3 votes, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we thought maybe the House passed it great, but the Senate wouldn't install just the way that healthcare did, but it didn't. So I kind of want to get into why it didn't, who the holdouts were, and what they were given concessions, because some of these things are very important. Like Steve touched a little bit in the Arctic, Alaskan wildlife refuge, and the gas and oil that will now be able to be refined there. And look what happened to Keystone.
The thing is, why does the Republican Party exist? What are their guiding principles? So it doesn't matter what beef you have with
pay attention
Donald
to
Trump.
the RNC convention.
The reason people have been ignoring his tweets and all of the craziness going on, and I do think we should move on to Michael Flynn in a moment, but the reason they've been ignoring all of this is because they wanted this. This is what the Donald Trump election was about. This is why they have been willingly sacrificing their morals and principles and everything they said they stood for. Because if Barack Obama, did any of this, or Hillary Clinton did any of the things that Trump did or said, they would have them tarred and feathered.
Well, it's because most liberals and Democrats
again,
hold people.
Hillary almost got locked up for
But
email.
it's not so much about holding people accountable. It is everything is worth it if they got to this point. This is John Favreau called it this, the GOP donor relief program, right? Because this is about
Kudos, John.
protecting their donors, the people who
The ends
no,
justify
yeah,
the means kind of
yeah.
situation, and you're right. It's kind of like a combination of like some of all fears kind of situation where it's like as long as they got their win, as long as they're still on top, it doesn't matter. To the victor go the spoils.
Yeah.
And they might have won in a little bit of a shady situation, and Mueller's hopefully going to get that wrapped up for us. But the fact is, Donald Trump
Is that
is
another
president.
Christmas
He's
pun?
a one-
No,
That's
he-
another
no,
Christmas
that's
pun?
not. Mueller's, yeah, I know, it's a Christmas
What-
pun.
On the
What-
first
look,
day
they-
of Christmas,
one
Mueller
other thing,
gets to
though,
me.
the Democrats are going to be the ones that pay for this.
Of
right?
course.
And they understand.
Well, wait.
Unless-
In what way? In what way?
2018 is a
No.
little different.
When I
In
mean
political
literally-
capital or
I
in
don't
actual
mean
pay?
political capital.
Oh,
I
okay,
mean
like
money.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
The Democrats will have to raise taxes on this, and then the Republicans will run and say, "See, the
Democrats
are
raise
raising more
taxes like always.
Even
blah,
though they
blah, blah.
probably would just put them back to where
And
they're
again,
supposed to have been.
Even though they didn't want to put in the automatic trigger. Well, no, I mean, I guess no, that works for him. But anyway, look, back to your question about what it means to be a conservative. I know we had maybe started with that image, but if you could put it back up, the tweet from Steve Schmidt, a GOP strategist. In it, he says that this tax bill demonstrates once again the total collapse of all and any rigor around the policymaking process in the GOP Congress. It is built on a foundation of lies. It adds more than $1 trillion to the debt, and no real conservative should vote for this. And with that being said, every single conservative, or so-called conservative, voted for it.
Except for Corker.
Except for Corker, but again, it's because he didn't get what he wanted. He didn't get that trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else got what they wanted. And I wanted to recap this quickly, and then we can move on to Flynn. But the holdouts were Jeff Flake, Ron Johnson, Steve Daines, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and John McCain. Jeff Flake, like Corker, wanted the trigger, but he did not get that. But he did get a promise that he
The
would
DACA.
he would get protections for the DACA recipients under the Obama era law.
Is it in writing?
It's
No.
not, which
It's-
also to me
okay.
sounded crazy. It's like,
Great.
we
Great.
promise we'll get there. We're going to talk to you
trusting
about
Mitch
this.
McConnell
To
come
work on
through
something,
something.
and out of all things, on DACA. Why? But anyway, whatever. Flake is, he's not
For the
running
guys
again.
that were against hope and change, it's just a little. This bill seems a little hopey.
Hope. I said hope.
I mean,
Hopefully, hope.
Look, when you talk about things like we're going to transition into talking about Michael Flynn, but that right there, I mean, his administration has been full of hand-picked people that got him where he is, and then he will replace them with these insider, blood oath loyalists, people who will do anything just to be there. That the Sarah Huckabee Sanders is versus the Spicers of the world. Where Spicy was all emotion, he was all at them and just, I'll attack you for anything, mutually assured destruction. And then you get the Huckabee Sanders just goes up there like a robot, says what she has to say, does everything she can to make it look like Trump can do no wrong. And they basically are doing exactly what Trump said he would do. And I got to give this to him. He did exactly what was expected of him. He's in there not just to drain the swamp, but to drain the life out of Washington, D.C. in general, leaving positions vacant, destroying the State Department. I mean, people are talking about
So
replacing
willful
Rex
destruction
Tillerson.
of the government.
Yeah, but that's what he said he was going to do. You can only do it from the inside out. If you want to destroy the federal government, reduce it, you have to do it from the inside. So you leave vacancies
but I
in
mean-
the State Department. You leave vacancies in judgeships. You tell people like Rex Tillerson not to do things that he's supposed to do, and then you basically let it leak that you might replace
With Mike
him with
Pompeo. Yeah.
And that means you're going to move the guy that's supposed to be in charge of the CIA to the State Department, which is supposed to be dealing with foreign affairs. It's supposed to have all these sub-ambassadors that are supposed to be dealing with all these issues. But Donald Trump is the type of person who says, I don't care what anybody thinks. It only matters what I think. And that is not what the president was supposed to be. The president, I mean, if Congress wanted to, and I learned this in my constitutional law class, Congress wanted to, they had a veto-proof majority, they could write it so that the president was one guy in an office who had to answer his own phone with no budget, and he just sat there and just had to sign bills, and that's all he could do. They could reduce the Supreme Court down to 1 or 2 judges and leave it like that. But Congress doesn't. They've abdicated their moral authority by passing things along party lines rather than thinking about people. And the president himself is destroying the executive branch by placing people in the heads of departments like the EPA, the FCC, and things like that, Ajit Pais and the Scott Pruitts of the world. And then they want to put they want to bring Tom Cotton in to replace.
Yeah, Pompeo at the
Yeah,
CIA.
at the CIA.
Which to me is fucking crazy.
Where does any of that
Like,
kind of stuff come from?
it's like
Why
we're gonna-
nobody cares?
He's gonna start a war.
It's like all these people elected him because they wanted him to be a different type of politician, yet he's just packing the executive branch with his cronies and with people who got him where he
But
is,
his defenders
rather
will
than
keep
anybody that's actually
defending
supposed to be
him
doing
no
it.
matter what. And you know what? Your argument,
Except for Michael Flynn, he's not defending it no matter what.
well, because he got caught.
Well,
And he's snitching. But before we get into Flynn, what you just brought up almost wraps up this perfectly. So you're right. Congress has given up their moral authority, and pretty much has. This is the first time they've actually done their job in years. I feel, since they were obstructing Obama this whole time. But the point is that a tax overhaul hasn't been done in decades. It's a big
31 years.
31 years. It's a big deal that it got done. It might be very, very hard to undo. Regardless
31
of
years. Didn't we have an economic recession in 1987 October?
Yeah, right when the last one was done, and we'll see what happens now. But so
Well,
with
I
that
need
being
to
said,
invest in Bitcoins.
it's important. It's important for us to get out there in 2018. Say our piece, and we'll see what happens in 2020. But this right now is bad. It's going to get worse, and it's going to be harder to repeal and turn back. And with that being said, unless anyone has
Flynn
anything
is
else,
guilty.
Flynn
He
is
had
guilty.
done said it. He pled guilty.
He got into a corner, and Robert Mueller keeps doing his job. Good
Listen,
old
Flynn
Bob.
had to look out for his
Snitch.
son. He had to.
Snitch.
You know what? Okay, we can joke about that and stuff, but the fact is that we need to support people like Michael Flynn and the Papadopouloses of the world. Not so much the
Papadopoulos.
Manaforts who want to just hold on because he's basically a subversion of a Ukrainian dictator.
Oh, there he is.
But you have people like Michael Flynn who are not only looking out for his own interests, but he has a son, Michael Flynn Jr., who he knows could also get in a lot of trouble. And no father, no parent,
Nope.
no legitimate parent
Nope.
wants to see anything bad happen to their kids. And if it's between supporting the golden one, the emperor himself, or making sure that your son doesn't spend years in federal prison,
You're gonna pick.
you're going to
helping
pick your
son.
family. And you know what? He doesn't have a lot of money. He's not rich like Paul Manafort was or the Papadopoulos. And Mueller could come after him. He pled guilty. He can get 3 years for it. But it's very likely that they have this out so that if he cooperates, they'll be like, okay, we'll go lean. Maybe we'll just do some probation or something like that. And we'll let you go. And if he doesn't cooperate, then they add more charges.
Yeah.
And then they hit him with the maximum sentence.
The judge
and
did say he can increase because, like,
Oh, yeah.
what he pled guilty for was something that had
Lying
a
to the
5-year
FBI.
charge.
Yeah,
one count.
3 to
The
5
judge
minimum.
made a point that he could increase the sentence
Yeah.
if he needed to, and
Exactly.
that's just
But-
the language that says,
but-
we own you,
Yeah.
and if you don't do what we tell you to,
And Trump's not going to write a pardon for him now.
No, not at all.
So
they're
he knows he has to
they're
work with
distancing
Mueller.
themselves from him. Now they're saying, oh, he was only in our administration for 24 days.
Could end up like Jorah the Andal.
Oh my God! So who would be Queen D?
Mueller at
Mueller.
this point, and you got Robert Baratheon still alive.
So
though,
we're
at this
going with the
point,
Game of
writing
Thrones
pardon.
references for this one.
Listen,
Okay,
it's
cool.
supposed to be the greatest
Who's
season
Ned
ever
Stark?
coming up.
Who's Ned Stark?
Ned Stark is dead. He died 8 years ago.
Oh wait, hold on. You know what? I'm not even gonna ask the next question. I'm gonna get into trouble. Anyways,
You will.
all right. So one, I feel this is good news. I feel that the shoe has dropped, but we should be wary to get really excited about this because time and time again,
The shoe dropped with a parachute.
we think Trump is in a corner. We think he's gonna.
Teflon Don.
Yeah, exactly. He this just bounces off of this guy and nothing really sticks, or it might if he's Teflon Don. But
Teflon, nothing sticks to Teflon. I think that's why they call him Teflon.
Let's not get into the particulars of Teflon.
I'm pretty sure it's what he coats his hair in.
Oh my God.
It's true.
Anyway, but okay, so Flynn is being charged just for lying about his meeting with the Russian ambassador, right? So from what I've been reading, this is not uncommon to do. With an administration coming in, it's not uncommon for, key members of an incoming administration to meet, at least to discuss policy. I know that the big deal was that he was trying to influence
He
the
said
vote
it was a
in the
holiday
UN.
meeting. That he was meeting them to say Merry Christmas when he was really meeting
Alright.
them to tell them what they should do.
Okay,
While a sitting
is-
president was still
but
in
is
charge.
there a smoking gun? The only real thing that I see come out of this is that now he's saying that he was directed by the administration, by key members of Trump's inner
Jared
circle,
Kushner.
if not
He
Trump
dropped
himself.
Jared Kushner's name.
He and other people. I think he said Bannon, and I mean he pretty much the inner circle. He said directed him, right?
Well,
and I don't know if that means
no.
Trump.
It's kind
But
of
it-
like playing 6 Degrees of Separation with Kevin Bacon, where you can link anybody to Kevin Bacon in 6 movies or less, and it's kind of like that. You get
So you're trying to link Trump
you
and
get
6
your
people
little
or
pieces,
less.
and anytime you play chess, you don't go straight for the kill. I mean, professional players, the Bobby Fishers of the world, they can get a checkmate in maybe 5 turns, 6 turns, whatever. But we're talking, we've got three turns moving. We got the Flynn, we got the Papadopoulos, and the Manafort.
But
What's the next move? We don't know.
What can they all really
I
give
mean,
though? I'm trying to get behind the
just
curtain.
little links. It's little baby steps. It's baby step, little step, little step, little step, and all you need is to keep Donald Trump and his administration wondering who's next,
and on their
keep
toes, which
keep
you've been
them
doing a good
nervous,
job.
and then they're not paying attention to other stuff like trying to destroy this entire country and turn it into a kleptocratic oligarchy where just Donald Trump and his family rules for hundreds of years, and the Fourth Reich has risen.
But hang on. So firstly, I want to say, I do think that there is a tendency to look at this as candy and say this is going to be
Ooh, piece of candy
to solve the problems that we have now. But even if Donald Trump was impeached or arrested tomorrow, that doesn't change the fact that he still got elected and how he got elected in the first place, and the things that are going on and
the damage he's done,
facts that people are willing to ignore. So I don't know if Donald Trump being out of office really fixes the problems that we have right now. And furthermore,
I'm fine leaving him in office, just neutering him.
What I'm interested in is I just want to catch Mike Pence in that lie, which is that, remember, Michael Flynn was fired, they say, because he lied
and
Mike
misled
Pence,
them.
Mike Pence said, even though he was leading the transition team, he said he did not know what Michael Flynn was doing. Apparently nobody knew what Michael Flynn was doing now, although he was a key member of the cabinet. But Mike Pence went on television and said, there was no interactions because that's what Michael Flynn told me. When it came out, because of the Washington Post article, that Michael Flynn, that was a lie, the first thing the Pence people said, or the Trump campaign said, was, Flynn lied to Mike Pence, and that's why. Mike Pence wasn't lying. He was just going off of what Michael Flynn told him.
He pled guilty to lying to the FBI.
Yeah, which is the same thing Papadopoulos or Manafort did, right?
But we're seeing now that Flynn says, no, high-level members of the cabinet
instructed me to do this.
And right now it's Jared Kushner. I guarantee you we're going to find out that Mike Pence did know, and he did come on TV and lie.
You know what we need for someone like Mike Pence?
But are there
he's so conservative, and he's so like, I'm just a good Christian man. We need Maury Povich, and he's the best at finding out if you've been telling a lie. I mean, look at all the memes you see all over.
Are there legal ramifications?
Are there? Absolutely.
For Pence lying on the was he under oath?
What?
Was Pence under oath at any time when he said
the
he was
Republicans are going to put any of them under oath?
But that's what I'm saying. So
no, that's why you get in trouble for lying to the FBI. You don't get in trouble for lying to Congress.
So
what?
Pence didn't speak with the FBI.
That's what I'm saying. So he went on TV. So what happens to Pence?
Pence is sort of Pence is very
is there fall
concerned.
Guy?
Not a fall guy. Pence is very concerned with his standing and his image
because he's eyeing future.
Now, if he's
looking at that chair. That's a nice chair.
To be the liar that everyone else is, then I think that says everything you need it to say.
He's a modern day Dick Cheney. Ew.
I wouldn't go that
he's
far.
He's pulling puppet strings, but he's not as bad. I mean, I hate that I'm saying he's not as bad as George Bush. George Bush was pretty bad, but I mean, this Donald Trump who thinks that he is absolutely the best thing that's ever happened to America, that he's going to do every single thing we've always dreamed of and wanted. It might sting a little, but you'll be better for it. It's absolutely not the case. If he gets impeached, if Mike Pence becomes president, he will not get anything accomplished, or he will because he just knows how to get things done. He's got God on his side. He's very, very apt to tell people. And you've got people like Neil Gorsuch sitting on the Supreme Court that are very much happy to defend Donald Trump's and the Mike Pence of the world. And at the moment, impeachment starts in the House and then removal goes to the Senate. And none of them are going to do that unless Democrats take 2018. So it won't matter who lied to who, under what oath. They'll do the same thing they did to Obama when they blocked holding nominations for Merrick Garland. They'll just not do it. They'll just sit there and we're just not going to do it.
So I have two questions. One is I want to ask you both how you feel about Comey's tweet that came out right.
Good.
It was good. And I liked it. I laughed. I thought it was great. But is it appropriate? Does it help or does it hurt the cause? I mean, because
he's not in office anymore. They fired him.
I get it.
He tweeted a quote from the Bible. Yeah. It's fine.
Oh, but come on. But I mean, you know the undertones of what he meant by it. And again, I'm just saying, in the divisive country that we are in now, this seems like a win for them, right? Should he have thrown extra salt on that, like, or
Why? Why shouldn't he? They fired him for no reason for doing his job. They
Because
fired
they-
him possibly to obstruct justice.
Yeah.
So yes,
No, of course,
If he sends
but-
out a tweet, if we're saying Donald Trump can send out a tweet,
I'm playing devil's
that's
advocate,
beat-
FYI.
I'm playing the angel's advocate. Look,
Nothing like Al
if
Pacino,
Donald
another
Trump can tweet a criminal.
Oh, but is
with
that the
fake
bar
videos
now?
in
Is
the
that what we're
UK.
doing
no,
now?
No.
Come on.
He tweeted a Bible quote from a person who is basically a traitor, right?
Yeah.
Just saying justice came for the traitor. So that, for me, that's like go America.
Okay, but that's what I mean. Okay, so justice came, right?
Justice in
But
America.
justice hasn't come yet.
No,
So I mean, are you
well,
are you
this is the
patting
guy.
yourself in the back before it's been
No,
done?
but it's not. It's
Like,
not about.
it's gonna seem like they're it's a collective, like they're really working on doing this for the wrong reasons, and that's
No,
a
it's
perception
not
I
the wrong
feel.
reasons.
they're-
The
no,
reason
we know the
is-
reasons are wrong. I'm saying Trump's people, his voters are gonna see this as like, oh, that's proof right there that they're doing this on purpose. And
Let me
they're
ask you-
they're
okay.
just trying to find the skeletons in the
hang on.
closet. Like,
slow down.
People
slow
love
down.
hypocrisy. Regular order. Regular
there will
order.
be order in the Senate.
Order here, order. I say. Now,
Quiet.
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that Trump's people, voters, would have been convinced if Comey didn't tweet anything?
No.
Do you think they're going to be like,
They
oh,
don't pay
here's
attention to
evidence.
it.
Here are facts.
No, it's just like what we
Probably
said.
not.
Just like what we
Well,
said when
okay.
we talked about the Time magazine thing. Like Donald Trump can say all he wants to his supporters that I turned Time magazine down, and Time magazine can respond. We don't talk about it until December 6th. Nobody even knew, but his supporters are only going to see what he tweeted. They're
Didn't
not
the
going to see the
Koch brothers just buy
response.
Time?
They did through the
did.
Meredith
The
group.
Meredith group, yeah.
And they
But-
backed it. Meredith is like, they're not going to have any say on what we do.
They're
But
not
the
gonna
last
be on
time
the
you
board,
sold
of course
yourself
they
to
are.
something, you pretty much listened to whatever that person that bought you said.
And this brings me to
That's
my
how
second
slavery
point
works.
off of all this. What do you think will be the ramifications if Trump's impeached? Aside from a lot of people parading down the streets of New York, LA, Houston, whatever, there's a big divide in the U.S., and there's a lot of people that might be angry. Do you think it'll get to the point where there'll be open violence or people actually going in the streets opposing that?
I don't
Or will
know.
people just go with it, roll with it, it happened, people will be mad, but it'll be more
Plenty
like...
of them have
I
seen
think
The
there will
Purge.
be a lot of hot takes and talking heads talking about it, but I honestly, I don't want Trump to get impeached. To be completely
I don't either.
honest
Why?
with you.
I want him
I-
neutered. I don't
I-
want him impeached. I want
No.
him neutered.
I want to have more balance in the Congress, and I want checks and balances.
I'm kidding.
And I want
I
him
want
to
him
be
impeached.
beaten in an election. I want there to be a resound, because if he's impeached, then everybody will say no. They went against what the American people wanted and they took him out, and it's the deep state. No, have an election and let him be taken out. Just the same way he won the election, let him get beaten in the election. And you cannot look for quick fixes to these things. Right? You cannot redo the 2016 election. It happened, and there are problems that we need to fix in America. Whether it is income inequality, whether it is bigotry, whether it is Islamophobia, whether it is racism, all those things need to be addressed, and they will not be addressed by Trump being impeached.
Okay.
And again, we can look at that.
So
but
his
we have
impeachment
to
would be
solve
like a
the real
Band-Aid
problem.
on a gushing wound, is
I
what
don't
you're
even
saying.
know if it's a Band-Aid, because like Mike Pence is a viper, and he's gonna say it with a softer tone. So at least you know what Trump is thinking.
I agree.
Right?
And
That's
Pence
why-
is more dangerous because he knows the inner workings of how
Exactly.
Congress works. He knows how to work and pass a bill. He knows how to whip
Does he
votes.
know what are his accomplishments? before this?
Well,
I mean,
we're
I don't
talking
know
about
per se,
been
but
a
he's been in
governor of
Congress
the
for-
state,
yeah, he's
he was
been
a
in Congress
congressman,
forever.
He's
But I'm saying,
super
what has
on
he
the religious
done-
right side.
What has he done as a congressman?
I
don't know.
That's a whole nother episode
Yeah.
to talk about what individuals have done. The fact is that anybody
knows
would be
the
afraid of a
process.
president.
Yeah, and he
Pence.
knows-
anybody who's anybody, any Democrat worth their salt, any Republican
If you've seen
who's
House
a
of
moderate,
Cards, you know what a president knows how to handle Congress can
they
accomplish.
would know that someone like Mike Pence would probably be the most dangerous possible outcome, which is why I'm flip floppy on whether or not I think Donald Trump should be impeached. Should he be impeached because he's clearly violated the Constitution and he doesn't deserve to be president? Absolutely. But at the same time, if he can be neutered in 2018 and not have anything get done significant in his agenda, I'm not saying I want the entire American ship to stall and sink. I'm saying the captain is suffering from early onset dementia and
No,
should
no,
not be
no,
the
no.
captain
Let's not
right
go
now.
there. Let's not
no,
go
I'm going to
there.
go there because we're
No,
talking
no,
about
no.
a president who they've already got billionaires posting up things to impeach the president. They say things like, with the one of the last amendments to the Constitution that says the president is unfit for office and he can be removed. And that is put there for things like Ronald Reagan, who was damn near senile by the time his term was over, and he didn't get anything accomplished in the last 2 years of his term because he couldn't work with anybody because he was too hard, just like the Chris Christies of the world that bully people into doing things. And while he might not be suffering from any mental illness, he certainly had social problems that made it difficult for anybody to want to work with him.
Yeah.
So Mike Pence, dangerous because he can get people to work for him and he can accomplish the same things Donald Trump is talking about, but worse. He could succeed in banning homosexuality. He could succeed in,
He would have to overturn
in scratching out pieces of the First Amendment to make Christianity the state religion or to make English the official language.
This is why these conversations are good, because up until right now, hearing Steve's points, I was on the impeachment team. You make some very valid points. Maybe the way to really respond to this is kicking him out of office the right way, the democratic
Neuter
way.
him in 2018.
And then,
kick him out.
and I kind of like what Steve said also, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, about, if we win in 2018, if by any chance the Dems can flip the House, the Senate, both, maybe not obstruction to the fullest, to the neglect that the Republican Congresses for the time that Obama was in office from 2010 to 2016, how they handled their obstruction, but, we could go in there and mitigate what this guy is doing right now. And like you're saying, neuter him, I guess, to an extent. But Pence is scarier. He could probably say it in a softer tone. And I don't trust the guy at all. He has some extreme tendencies and way more, I think, to the right than Trump ever was. Because again, Trump, for better or worse, his whole life was a Democrat. He was a Clinton-loving, DNC
Trump
donor,
has no principles.
New York lefty. He doesn't have principles. He ran on the Republican
As many
ticket
principles as
because
Trump
it was the
University.
only.
Which has
you're on
zero
point
principles.
You're on
right
point
now.
today. You're an asshole. But anyway, okay. So yeah, impeachment might not be the right thing, and if it happens though, I wouldn't fight it. I was just worried, or I wanted to know if you felt that might incite violence or a very big response from his group, or would it just be something taken in stride?
I
People
see
are
what your
angry,
question is,
and yeah, that was really only my question.
Okay, so do I think that it would incite violence? Yes. I do think
to a
that it
major
would.
degree.
I think that it would incite violence to the point where people are going to be like, where are these militias that are supposed to be protecting us from the government, because now they're taking away our president. That was our president, and you're standing against us, like Steve said. These people who put him in office in the first place already started off. Their default was anger. Their default was anti-immigration, was anti-government, anti-taxes, regardless of whether they know how any
America
of those things
first.
actually applied to them.
Some of them. Let's not.
let's not
the
overgeneralize.
only-
You're right.
And listen,
You're right.
and the other ones that did were the moderate Republicans who just couldn't bring themselves to vote for a Democrat because it was Hillary Clinton's name
or
attached to
because
it.
they wanted,
Or because they
this
thought they
tax
could
reform.
change Donald Trump's
Yeah.
mind. They thought
This
they
is
could water him down, and nobody can water him down. He doesn't want to be. He's not the type of person that will. He's that everything ends with me, except I take no responsibility for anything bad that happens. And when you get back to a little bit of the Michael Flynn thing, all these people that Mueller might wrap up in this net, in this probe, and getting those baby steps from the Papadopouloses and the Manaforts to the Flynns to whomever comes next.
Kushner.
Yeah, but even if we talk about these pardons, what I'm hoping for is that some of these crimes that Mueller might actually start trying to work with state attorney generals to have charges brought up on state offenses, which
Aren't federal
not,
offenses.
yeah, they can't be pardoned.
They can't be pardoned. Yep.
Governors could do that maybe, but you think Andrew Cuomo is going to pardon Jared Kushner?
No.
Do you
He's
think
probably
Governor
died
Brown
of-
is going to pardon anybody?
Which is smart that he's setting all these things up in these blue states where he knows that they won't be protected.
Yeah, well, that's why he's got the
Yep.
grand juries in Virginia. He's got the grand juries in D.C. He can pick anywhere he wants
There's
as long as the
definitely-
crime was committed there.
There's a strategy there, and I think there's definitely an end game that he's not making us aware of, which he shouldn't be, which is why he's kept
Oh yeah, he's doing a
Trump
great job.
and his administration and the lawyers on their toes.
Oh no, they're gonna start rolling on each other because nobody knows what's coming next. This is why I think I'm okay with House of Cards being gone, because this is so much better. So
You know
Maybe
what?
that's why they went, because Papa John's can say that the football protests were causing a lack of pizza sales. I
Until
think
that
the House of
comment hurt
Cards,
them more.
Harvey Weinstein, the Weinsteins and the Kevin Spacey things aside, maybe they can be like, well, you know what? It's just far more interesting to watch C-SPAN, and no one has ever said that ever.
Yeah, and I was actually having a similar thought last night while I was doing my research for today's show, is that I've always liked politics. I've always, read up, kept up on what's going on, but to really, have to pay attention the whole week to the drama that unfolds. It goes hour to hour, day by day. This guy said yes, this guy said no. Now they're running here. Now they're having
now we're
you
gonna
believe
go to
11
World War
months has
III
already
with North
passed?
Korea.
Yeah.
Now our oldest friend in the UK now thinks that is disinviting the president
You know,
from the
and
UK.
that's a great segue into that. When a hack like
Love the word
Theresa May,
segue.
like I do, like a hack like Theresa May, if she can go out and chastise Trump, which is our president. I'm not one of those. He's not my president. I'm an American. He's my president. Whether I like him or not, there's a respect that office should hold. There's a level of expectancy that comes with being the president of the free world or whatever. So for a hack like her,
Or
it just
whatever.
he puts himself in these stupid positions by doing things that, like, I mean, his social media team, his communication team was like, they must want to quit on a regular because
No.
they have to put out these
No.
fires of his own doing. And I mean,
They're
go-
lighting the fires on purpose. I mean, his social media director's name is Dan Scavino. Everybody, Dan Scavino.
Google him.
That's Scavino.
Oh, okay.
And he's been with him since the beginning, and he is responsible for sending out tweets in Donald Trump's voice from the Twitter handle at Real Donald Trump. Supposedly the real Donald Trump is Dan Scavino talking in his voice. So you've got one major problem with a person holding the official Twitter account of the president, who oftentimes makes official announcements over Twitter, who's speaking in his voice and who has millions of impressionable followers, that if he decided to, even though he's a blood oath loyalist to Trump, if he decided to tweet out, "I've launched a missile at North Korea," it would take minutes, if not hours, for Donald Trump
So
or a
you're
team to
saying
get
it's
together
Dan
and stop it.
Scavino on Twitter all this time and not
No,
Trump?
it's usually between the hours of 10 a.m. and like 8 p.m. are the times when it's likely that it could be either Trump or Scavino. Before 10 a.m. when Trump is up just watching Fox News in his underwear, or if it's afterwards when he's tweeting in the middle of the night because he doesn't do cocaine, he's just up for some reason
Are
on
we
Diet
sure about
Cokes.
that?
He's just drinking Diet Coke. He
You
loves
guys
his
are
Diet
going
Coke.
in today.
He is the type of
Alright.
person that will just tweet.
This
He will
tax
talk
bill
like
has us feeling
Donald
some
Trump.
type of way, huh?
He'll talk like Donald Trump. He'll say the things
MAGA.
he wants. And it's very possible that it was him that reposted the 3 videos from
that-
Jaden
is that-
Franson.
Yeah.
Jaden
Don't take that away
Franson
from
was the deputy director or vice director. I don't know how you do it in England. Vice minister.
Is that Trump's defense though?
No, he's not
Okay,
using it as a
so
defense.
that should
but
not be a
It is
defense.
likely, though, that because Donald Trump would not be sitting in a computer and be able to repost because he uses Twitter from his phone, I'm positive that you can't use Reddit at the same time as Twitter or whatever page he got these videos from to repost them. You know, for him to
These are
figure
mini
that out.
computers, bro.
I'm just saying, for him to
2017.
figure that out while also trying to be president of the United States is beyond me. I think he just tweets when he tweets, and this Scavino guy probably
Can't
saw
rob
these
from
things.
the middle class and be on Reddit and Twitter at the same
Yes,
time.
you
Come
Yes,
can.
you can.
Yes, you can. Do you not know
Not when
the
you're the
sheriff
president.
of Nottingham? So basically, this Jaden Franson woman
Yeah, so
is
people don't know
already-
what happened.
She is the deputy second in command of this group, Britain First.
And who are they?
And they are an ultra right wing, nationalist that says every single Muslim in the world is an enemy because every single Muslim is beholden to a jihad. And once one guy decides to call a jihad, everybody else, oh God, they called a jihad again. Like I have to. We're all together. We have to do this thing. It's not like Christians have ever gone on a big rampage to another country.
Oh, the Crusade.
Oh.
Or the Spanish Inquisition.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
All
Indiana
those?
Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so this is a group that claims that every single
it's
Muslim
up on
in the
the
world
screen.
is trying to kill us all, and that its ultimate enemy, Britain First. They're basically like the Breitbarts of England, and they're being condemned by the British Parliament, by the majority of British citizens, and charged with possible racial motivated crimes.
And they've
hate
been
crimes.
locked up. This woman, Jaden Franson, she's been in jail before.
Is that
She's-
Ashley Simpson?
She's occupied mosques. And all right, and so what happened? What did
So
Trump do to
basically,
get the ire of
they-
the British people?
The main thing that was posted out of the 3 videos, what everybody was up in arms about, was one video that portrayed what appeared to be a Muslim teenager beating up a beautiful white blonde-haired Dutch boy on crutches and saying that these Muslims are just attacking all white Christians everywhere, when it was 2 Dutch citizens, just one happened to be brown and one happened to be white, and it's likely that it was even set up. So you have the President of the United States, whether it was him or Scavino, reposting something that is inauthentic, that has not been fact-checked, that doesn't even serve any purpose except to incite rage and violence and hatred and fear, and he's reposting
And division.
3 of them, and
Don't
division.
forget division.
And we can't forget division. Everybody loves math. You cannot forget that this is a voice, whether he is a legitimate president in people's minds or not. It's still his voice.
No, yeah, it's
And
an important
we're-
voice. It
to
is
the
an
point
important
where
voice.
this meeting that was set up by Theresa May, she invited him in the spring.
Yep.
And everybody in England, even the Queen, said it was premature.
Well, he got invited before. He got invited right after his inauguration,
yes.
and that was moved back.
Yes, but they moved it, and now They've downgraded it to a working visit. It's no longer a state visit. No red carpet. No meeting with the Queen.
No golden, because he was going to get that golden carriage with the horse
loves
down,
golden carriages.
down into Buckingham Palace.
So he's not going to get that. If anything, it's basically to save face so that he can just send an ambassador or whatever. And whatever they were going to talk about, they talk about. They coincided with the opening of a new U.S. embassy in London. Now, the U.K. has never, ever, ever canceled a visit. They've hosted, the dictator of Zaire. They've hosted Mugabe. They've hosted the Romanian dictator Sarkozy. I can't pronounce it. Whatever his name was. The point is that they've hosted some pretty not so nice people. They've had Vladimir Putin there, and they don't want Donald Trump.
Yeah, and the worry within the UK and what's been going on here in the US is that, again, Trump is a very important voice. He is the president of the United States of America. What he says carries weight. What he says influences people. And this guy, Mike Penning, who's a lawmaker from the ruling Conservative Party in the UK, he said, quote, "The real danger is that the vast majority of our constituents had never heard of Britain first, and this has given them huge oxygen."
Mm-hmm.
Trump is giving a platform to basically a hate group.
Oh yeah, he's trying
Don't
to.
forget what,
he's doing
Eddie
what Vladimir
Lemmy
Putin
did.
did.
It's racist, it's disgusting, and it's wrong. And I don't care if it was Dan Scavino, if it was Trump. I don't think it matters because most people, I feel Trump is not beholden to this rule because I think he really likes to put his own words and his voice out there. But most people in high positions of power, especially within the government, CEOs, if they're active on social media, they have a team that works for them, a communication team, someone who does post for them. So it's not uncommon. I'm pretty sure Obama had someone that posted for him. But these get checked. There should be a system in place, where the communication team runs this, within themselves, goes through the chief of staff gets approved by the president, whatever. And that should be the process. I don't think there's a process here for this, which is why this crap keeps happening. And whether it was Scavino or Trump is indicative.
For example, Trump's response to Theresa May.
Yeah, put it up.
Saying that this was obviously a bad thing to do. He says, "Hey, Theresa, don't focus on me. Focus on the destructive radical Islamic terrorism that is taking place within the United Kingdom. We are doing just fine!" Exclamation point.
Yes, rampages every week, and I'm pretty sure that he tweeted that to the wrong Theresa May the first time around.
Oh, did he?
Hi-oh.
Yeah, I believe I saw things where he actually tweeted the wrong Theresa May, and obviously this man is not mentally fit to do anything, let alone handle a Twitter account and a nuclear button at the same time. We have an issue with our biggest ally, former, I guess we can say former daddy. UK used to spank
or
us.
mommy.
UK used to spank us a little bit, and then we spanked back, and we took over, and they were like,
they
"You guys
spank-
aren't going to last
they
forever.
spanked the whole world."
You need a king. You need a king." And now Donald Trump thinks that he is that, and he's spitting on them. And Prince, William married the biracial American princess.
No, that
lady,
is Prince Harry, and he got engaged.
Yeah,
and the vitriol that came out of
I
that
know,
was
but
just.
It's great though because I saw the meme that came up saying that means that their kid can be an American citizen and also the heir to the British throne. They're playing the long game. They are trying to take us back, and they're doing it the British way. We're just like, oh please, just come on back.
Harry's kids have more chance of becoming a U.S. president than being in line for the throne because they'd have to kill their 3 older cousins because their
older cousins are old.
William just had 3 kids, bro. They're like my kids' age. So whatever. The point is,
because no royal has ever murdered their family to exceed in the line.
I don't think any time in the past century. Well, no. Yeah. I don't think
Kim Jong killed his stepbrother and his uncle.
Dude,
these things.
I don't know if they're a monarchy though.
Stranger things have happened.
Have happened.
But I want to read
2 seasons
tweet
of it.
from David Lemmy. Who's David Lemmy?
You know what? I'm not really sure.
He's a guy
I picked that because I.
All right, somebody do their Googles real quick. Let's find out.
Spell it out for me again. David.
David Lammy.
If I can't find him in here,
David L.
No, Lammy. David Lemmy.
Oh, he's an MP.
Okay, so
a member of Parliament.
Yep, he is part of the British Labour Party, and he represents Tottenham since 2000.
All right, so David Lemmy of the British Parliament says the sharing of those videos is a crime in the UK called inciting hatred. We should be asking the FBI to investigate putting Donald Trump. He's just his Twitter.
Yeah, at the real Donald. Yeah,
putting at the real Donald Trump on a watch list and barring him from entry to our country. A state visit is a lowly act of appeasement. Have we forgotten our history?
Yep, and he's talking about Hitler in that one. That is a complete direct.
Yeah, there you go. Neville Chamberlain
Yup.
going into,
Nice.
you can have the Sudetenland, just make sure you
David
don't
Lemmy,
take
no
us
chill.
down.
He
you
gave
see.
him a hand and he took the arm and the
Oh,
body and the
absolutely.
legs and basically
and,
everything.
and took a lot of Americans' arms, legs, and
Yep.
body parts too.
Or to quote a recent movie that's coming out called The Darkest Hour.
Okay.
You don't negotiate with a lion when your head is in his mouth.
That's true.
Oh.
But at the same time, what they did in the steps leading up to World War II was the German Nazi Party incited Nazi and right wing fascist groups in
Yeah,
other
all across
countries.
Europe, all
That's what
across
Donald
Europe.
Trump does by reposting something from Britain First, which had almost no traction in England, and now they're kind of like looking at it like the people that never even knew they existed. They're like, oh, so there is some place for me to go to organize my hatred and possibly carry out
And
terrorist
again,
attacks.
Trump has 43 million
Yup,
followers.
and-
He's just broadcasting.
and there's
giving them free advertising.
This woman, Franson, posted on her Twitter, tagging him, saying, I'd like to start by saying how delighted I am that the leader of the free world took time out to retweet 3 of my videos today. So again, he's giving them a platform. And you're right, look, sometimes I feel uncomfortable.
Calling the president the
Making-
leader of the free world, not her own leaders.
No, which is the implication, right? And so again, sometimes I feel uncomfortable
Wait,
bringing
am I
up
going to get trouble for
the-
drinking water on camera? Did
No.
I break eye contact?
No, the correlation between Trump and Hitler, because it doesn't make me uncomfortable because I don't think there's truth behind it. It makes me uncomfortable because I know it turns off other people to hear the argument being made. And I'm not saying that he might end up being as bad as, Hitler, but there are correlations to be made, and what does that mean, and what is the end game there?
I don't think you have to go to Hitler, but you can say that he
Other
is
strongmen
he
dictators
has-
have
right,
made the same
right,
play.
and he
or play.
has
He's
a
following the
penchant
playbook.
for authoritative leadership.
Yes.
Right.
That's
Like,
why he loves
it's-
Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Rodrigo Duterte and
Yep.
Vladimir Putin
And they
Xi
sing songs
Xi
together and
Jinping.
I think
hug.
you
and-
lose a lot of people when you make the.
I'm
Hitler.
just
No, I agree,
surprised
I
he doesn't
agree,
like
which
Kim
is-
Jong Un.
Which is what I'm saying, but
I'm genuinely surprised that he's not a fan of Kim
How
Jong Un.
about he's just as bad as Trump? How about he just gets his own?
so that's a new
turn?
thing now.
You know
We're
what
just
I mean?
gonna
Like,
make
you
it
know
as
how
bad as
something
Trump.
could be the Cadillac of cars or something else. You could just be the Trump.
So the Cadillac of bullshit now is
Like,
Donald
yes,
Trump.
Hitler.
Got
The word Trump used to mean
Trump-
things like trumped up. Like it used to mean fake, fluff, all this kind of nonsense of where you can say all you
Did
want,
that
but it's
come
just
from
nothing.
his name?
I don't know if it did, but because then people started saying, "Oh, you got your Trump card up your sleeve" and stuff like that. So it went from being this whole moniker of like this is clearly an exaggeration, like a big fish story, to you have a secret weapon. Because the whole concept of Donald Trump and what he says in his books is you have to always be willing to walk away. But you can't do that if you want people to trust you. If you want people to make deals and negotiations, you can't tell them, well, I'm always going to be willing to walk away because I know that you'll come back.
Yeah.
Not most people won't come back. What if England's just like, screw you guys.
He's
We're going
hurting.
home.
Well, I mean, the world is organizing now around understanding that
We're not
America
in-
may not be
yep.
the largest.
And
factor
that's
in
hurting
the
us
deal. And
long-
That like when you look at the grand scheme of things is
Yeah.
actually pretty terrible.
It's terrible. It's scary. It's also it's gonna take time to repair. When that time comes to be done. But again, we touched upon it on the conversation for the TPP. We're going to be playing from behind in many, many, theaters of the world. And falling behind like this doesn't help us at all in the long term. And it just sucks that our president is the one putting us in the position. And again, to Joe's point, his followers aren't going to care because these people voted him to do exactly what he's doing. And they don't want us to be leaders in the world. And to an extent, I have some opinions on that. I think we could take a step back. But to vacate that position, to leave that vacuum open for someone like China, Russia, Germany to move in and take that away from us, is not smart or beneficial to us in any way. Because no matter how backwards we want to go in the terms of America first or just being isolationist, it can't happen. The way the world is set up right now, even the internet, everything, we are connected and we have to be. And trying to bring that back isn't going to work. It's going to hurt us. And it's what Trump is doing.
Well,
But-
if you want to make that the one topic you talk about as your end
And
of
the
show
show.
roundtable.
Well, I was just going to bring that. It's not, but...
I segued before you.
You did. All right, so we're coming up to the end of the show, and we kind of want to start wrapping up in a way in which we either are going to take questions from all of you who are watching, or if not, we're going to go around and talk about something that is important or that we want to bring up this week without much debate or conversation afterwards, almost like an aside. So, Joe, do you want to start this week?
Well, since just kind of you segued into it. Wink. Yeah. I don't know. Why don't we let Steve start with the first?
No pressure on me.
Well, because
No, but
you
you did have something
suggestions that we didn't cover today in the show. So.
Well, I mean, there were a few, but something that sort of stuck out to me this week is just like this trend, and we try to bring light and have the discussion around the male patriarchy that is, and what seems to be a culture of harassment, like institutional. And this thing that is just built in the nature of existence. When we're seeing from Al Franken to Roy Moore to the President of the United States, Matt Lauer,
Charlie Rose.
So we're seeing all these things happen, and
Garrison Keillor.
One thing I wonder, what is the job? What is the goal here? Right? Is the goal of these investigative journalists who uncover these things, and rightly so, and I'm glad that they do. But is the goal to sort of shame people out of existence, or is the goal change? And the only reason I ask this, because again, this is a discussion that needs to be had, and this is a watershed moment. But I do wonder, when I look at what's happening with John Conyers, and you look at what's happening with Al Franken, and to an extent Roy Moore. Do we want due process for these things, or is an accusation in itself enough to sort of take punitive action? And if that is where we are, that's a scary place.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And again, this is not saying you don't believe, like, you should take every accusation and you should believe anyone who comes forward, man, woman, or whatever. But are we saying if someone makes an accusation,
should that be enough?
Is not allowed to defend themselves, and everyone based on an accusation needs to sort of sever ties, and people should resign based on an accusation before the due process has taken place?
Well, it seems to me that's kind of like...
Are we a nation of laws, or are we not? Now, I do agree that we should put laws into place that would better protect victims of any of these,
like eliminating non-disclosure agreements,
whatever that is.
Yeah.
But I mean, there needs to be a process other than we are publicly shaming you, and Twitter is the judge and jury.
Yeah. I see your point, and my quick answer to it would be that I don't know. I know that I don't think everyone should only be judged and shamed in the court of public opinion. I do think that there is a job to be done by these journalists, and these investigations going on and accusations being made is indicative of a bigger problem that should be explored, because I mean, everyone right now is being accused, almost, it feels like. And again, I'm not saying that these women are liars. There could be one, there could be two. And if that's the case, then are we judging people and ruining careers and lives without due process, which we're guaranteed as Americans to go and, have a trial with, with a jury of our peers and present truth and be able to defend yourself? And I think you should be given that chance. And I don't think lives should be destroyed in the court of public opinion, but I don't know what that middle ground is in a sensitive topic like this.
This is not to discount, because again, if you are a victim of that sort of assault, your life could have been destroyed. So, and I'm not saying that we need to sort of either not believe or say that the accused has more rights here, but I'm saying, if the goal is due process and building a framework where this is not allowed, then great. But if the goal is someone makes an accusation and then all of a sudden
you run with it,
you're gone.
That's not helpful.
Is that what we want?
You bring up obviously a good and very sullied point. Where everybody is talking about stuff like this and what we should do. How do we address it? I don't remember anywhere in the Constitution where the court of public opinion is a tribunal. It's just a giant jury of all the people who who are paying attention. It's kind of like, if our entire lives are being broadcast on TV, like the Truman Show, there is no judge. There's just the people watching and what they think and what their consensus is. In a way, it almost seems like these are reparations for decades and centuries of male and patriarchal domination over females, making them feel like they only have one way of advancing through work. And you come at now and you find out things like people like Matt Lauer, who you thought were just the nicest guy because of his TV persona, who turns out to have been a guy who was giving sex toys to his employees and threatening them, and people being either racist or sexist. You got people in Arkansas passing laws that say a rapist can sue the woman who aborts his rape baby.
Yep.
And you've got a woman who's 15 years old and sex trafficked,
Serving
killed her abuser, and is serving prison term for that.
When Brock Turner served 3 months or something
less
for
than that. He served less time than my cable bill takes to come around. I mean, there are so many bad things and so many hypocritical arguments that can be made on both sides, and so because these people don't get their due process, they don't actually get to go to court, doesn't mean that they aren't guilty, or doesn't mean that they shouldn't lose their jobs. But at the same time, if these are people who we were supposed to trust and we now no longer can trust them, then why should they maintain their position? Why should the Conyerses of the world and the Matt Lauers of the world get to stay in positions where they get to talk at us and feed us our opinions and affect the way we conduct our lives? Why do they get to be in that position if they are sullied themselves?
He who has not sinned, throw the first stone, right? Am I paraphrasing there?
Give me a box of rocks, because I have never given sex toys to an employee.
I get to use my word again. I will segue into my topic that I wanted to bring
segue
in
away.
because it's relevant. So what I wanted to bring up today is just to rectify a lie that Trump has been putting out there.
We got him.
Got him.
Right.
Call Mueller.
Right.
Get him on the line. See if we can follow him on Twitter.
Voters on the watch right now. This is it. We're going to show
This
them
is
the truth.
what
Why'd you wait
guys
to
have
the
been
end of the
waiting
show
for.
to do this?
No. With the election coming up in Alabama, I think it's really important, at least to whoever's watching and will be watching this video, for me to shed some truth to Trump's talking point. So he is supporting Roy Moore, which he didn't initially do. He's now doing it. And in doing so, he's also talking down Doug Johnson, who he's calling weak. Doug Jones, who he's calling weak. Doug Jones is a guy who tried KKK members and put them behind bars. So I don't know how the hell a guy like that is weak.
He's weak on racism.
Yeah, he's weak on exactly, which is not good for Trump's brand. So again, I just please do your homework. Don't feed into this. Doug Jones is a good candidate, and to me, it's disgusting again that Trump is supporting someone like this, because the same way that he's doing with the Britain First retweets, he's now propping up a guy who's been accused of pedophilia. Again, he hasn't been charged in court. He hasn't been found guilty, and your feelings about that can be whatever they can be. But when the president of the free world, when the most important political person in the world is out there supporting a guy like that, he leaves the door open for people who might feel that acting like that is okay. And that is not okay in itself. And that's all I have to say about that.
Do you
that's
need
wrong.
to go to, because again, I'm sort of weird about accusations and what people should do based on that.
Yeah.
Now I do agree with you, Joe. Right? Like, it's not in the Constitution. Like, Twitter's not in the Constitution.
Yeah, due process is guaranteed by the government to the citizens. Citizens amongst themselves.
Right. And again, none of these people are going to jail, so maybe you have to go by public opinion, right? But with Roy Moore, he's done other terrible things. Like, he doesn't think Muslims should be allowed to serve in Congress, right? I
don't think he thinks they should be allowed to serve in anything in the U.S.
Right.
Yeah, they shouldn't be allowed to serve
this is
in
a
life.
guy who lost a judgeship or a role in elected office because he kept the 10 Commandments out or brought it in. Like, this guy is not. Like, I guess I'm saying the voters of Alabama know who he is,
Yeah.
and they know these accusations. So I guess my question is, if the voters of Alabama know that, and he is supposed to represent them, shouldn't they have a chance to vote on the guy? And again, we can make all our judgments on Alabamians. I don't know if that's the word, but
Alabamans.
Sure.
Bamans.
Whatever you call them.
Roll
But
Tide.
shouldn't they be allowed to make that decision? They're
No,
adults,
they
and
should.
we can
They
sort
should.
of look at them. So
They should, and then it'll be a representation, I guess, of their worldview. And again, Alabama doesn't represent the United States, and I feel that they should
Kind
be
of
able
like
to
the
vote
Jersey Shore doesn't
for who
represent
they
New
want.
Jersey, but everybody still looks at us like fist pumpers.
But with that being said,
I just believe, like, when the grass is cut, the snakes will show. So let him vote. Let them vote on Roy Moore and let's see.
No, I agree.
But some
and
of
then
the
what the
voters
Senate does after that, I don't know. They could expel him.
These voters are talking about, like, I don't know if I should support a pedophile or a Democrat, as if those were two things. Like,
or reconciling how in the Bible, older men
if
can be with younger women. And
yeah, but that was either
that
men were
okay.
700 years old or they were 30 and they died.
If they vote him in, I don't know that Congress can vote him out.
Yes,
I
they
don't know.
can. The Senate can expel.
No.
its
But
members.
again, what are you saying? You're saying that the people voted this guy in, and now we don't care about what the people say. I'm just saying that's a dangerous precedent.
Yeah, well, you know what? We've done a lot of dangerous precedents. We have a dangerous president. Okay.
Zing.
There we go with the zing.
All right. So you got anything else?
Yeah,
we wrap this
I
up?
do.
We are going to wrap up with Joe.
round table. I want to talk about something tucked in is the concealed carry reciprocity law that Congress wishes to pass on behalf of the NRA and their red-backed partners. It is a law that basically said whatever the weakest concealed carry law is, if you live in a state that has a weak concealed carry law, you can bring your gun to a state that has strong laws, and they have to it's reciprocity. They have to honor those laws.
It's like
ironic,
right?
In other open carry states, or in a state like New
So
York where you
if
can't even
Texas-
bring ammunition in without being arrested.
Texas, you can get a concealed carry permit pretty much on your way to buy milk at the grocery store. And that's basically saying that if you have a concealed carry permit in Texas and you come to New Jersey, which you have to basically be threatened or be a former police officer to have a concealed carry permit, that if you, as a citizen of Texas, you will have the right to carry your gun in public. And if you get situations like what happened with that with the guy from Patterson who decided to drive a Home Depot truck into a bunch of people, and he had not real guns, they were BB guns, paintball guns. If you have a situation like that where the police are reacting immediately, and then you've got a bunch of people from whatever state they may be from running around thinking they're Walker Texas Ranger, thinking that they are vigilantes and they're going to stop the terrorists, how are police in that very quick moment, especially in a place where they are not allowed to have concealed carry permits, supposed to differentiate between someone who's being a terrorist and someone who thinks that they're vigilante in plain clothes, pulling out their shotgun, pulling out their Glock, whatever gun they may have? They want to pass this law to basically put guns in every state and say that all you blue states, no matter what you want to do, your laws don't matter anymore, while at the same time calling it a reciprocity law, not saying that anybody from New Jersey can go to Texas and get a concealed carry permit because you're a New Jersey resident. You have to go by your laws. Why doesn't Texas have to follow the strict gun laws of another state? I mean, it doesn't really work that way. I get it, but it's not a reciprocity law if it only favors one side.
Yeah.
One thing about that though, we did just see that a pedestrian,
Yep, I was going to bring that up.
Citizen, sort of acted as the hero. They had a gun at the church shooting. Was it in Texas?
Yeah,
it was the Texas church shooting, and the guy was across the street, and the man had already shot up the church. He had already killed dozens and scores of people.
He could have
killed more, but didn't. He was already fleeing the church and was chased down. He was shot, and he ended up shooting himself and killing himself. And at no point have I ever really seen reasonable people say that vigilante justice is what we should be counting on. Now, I know there are plenty of places in the world that are miles and miles from a police station.
The Green Arrow would differ.
Where they have one sheriff in the entire county and maybe 3 deputies, and you can't expect law enforcement to be everywhere.
Look,
but at the same time, you can't say that we can't have people like Batman running around, but we also can't. We also have to. But we also but we also have to respect police and law enforcement, and that's what they want. They're like, we have to respect the rule of law, police, law enforcement, but at the same time, we should be letting vigilantes run around if they decide that they want to intervene in a situation. But you never
and they're white.
Look, I don't know.
You can't forget that. They also have to be white.
Yeah, and they have to be white, of course. I mean, if it was a Muslim that had stopped him, or some black guy with a gun that stopped him, they probably
the black guy might have been shot.
Or they would have arrested him too, because they wouldn't have known, were you the one who just shot up the church? Like they would have shot first, asked questions later.
This is the first I'm hearing of this, and in the way you've explained it, I don't agree with it for one reason. One being that if you have weak gun laws in the state that you live in and you can open carry, and then you go to New York, which has very strict gun laws, and you don't, and then now they have to, take that in stride and respect that, they don't have the structure in place to deal with an issue that might come from that. And I think that's not fair. With that being said, I think that maybe the bill would better be served if it was that you can go into other states that have open carry laws. If yours is weaker or whatever, and there's a stronger, and that would be reciprocated. Because we differ on this opinion, I think that people should and do have the right to open carry. I know I'm the only one probably in this room that believes that. I don't think it's about being a vigilante. Yeah, yeah. And again, I'm not in law enforcement, but I'm pretty sure that
So by all means, watch the movie Tombstone if you think everybody should be able to walk around with a gun. Go
yeah, but it's not the
look
Wild
at-
West anymore. There's laws now.
They-
There's structures in place.
People
All I'm
walk
saying is
around
like,
with
look,
swords and knives
big-
for hundreds of thousands of
when
years.
big things happen, a perimeter is closed off by the cops, right? So after that is done, I'm pretty sure that almost takes care of the issue of some random vigilante running in there shooting it up.
What?
I think that it helps in a sense, almost like what Steve brought up in the Texas shooter incident. I don't care if he was running away, if he's done shooting up. I know, because none of you agree. I don't care if he was done shooting up the church and he was going somewhere
That
else.
wasn't even a
What
concealed
if that-
carry. That was just a guy
No,
with a gun.
I get it. I'm just saying the guy that shot him and stopped him acted heroically and maybe could have saved other lives. You don't know where this guy was heading with that loaded gun. Yeah, he was running away from the church. Was he going to go look for his in-laws that weren't in the church who were his prime, targets? Was he going to go shoot up his wife? Was he going to someone's, house to break in to avoid capture and kill a family? You don't know. And again, there's a fine line. I think people should be, it's a whole other conversation. I think gun law should be stricter. There should be more, checks in place. But I think people should be able to own and carry guns in the United States of America. That's my opinion.
I think that people should get a mental evaluation.
Yeah,
before
you
they
should.
can carry a gun.
I'm game.
And then give it everybody.
I'm
But
game for that.
The same way I have to go and take a driver's test.
Exactly.
To
Yep.
have a license, which
Yeah.
could kill people.
And then you register your car with the
right.
state.
So
Why not have a gun registry? And again, that's a whole
but then
other
who
conversation.
has what, and then the militias can't protect from the tyrant leaders.
So now you're playing devil's advocate, right?
There's
Because not anything Steve would say. But thanks for bringing that up, Joe. I had no idea what was going on.
Listen, it's been up for a while. I'm just surprised
Wow.
that everybody's
Yeah,
talking so
Ronnie
much about
says,
tax laws and stuff.
Concealed carry
Yeah, I just saw
firearm
that.
licenses are honored
You know what,
throughout
but
the U.S. already.
They
I
might
did
be
not know that.
honored. They might be honored, but it's still
It's not honored in New York.
it's still something that you can decide whether or not to do. If you're
Yeah.
running around with a gun out in a supermarket, you're still going to get arrested even if you have your permit. You'll
Yeah.
get arrested and whatnot. This says that you can't even bother arresting the person because it's just reciprocal.
I forget the name of it, but there's a documentary out about, I think, 4 or 5 people that were arrested in New York City and had to pay fines and spend some time in jail because they had, let's say, an empty ammunition cartridge. Or there's rules that what's the organization that handles flights, FAA. The FAA, right? Okay, cool. FAA. They have on their website rules of how you can carry a concealed weapon if you have a license for it. There's instructions that are federally mandated, right? But in New York, it doesn't matter because they have stricter gun laws and people have been going to jail for that, even though they haven't broken a real law.
Yeah, I mean,
So
Christie
again, there's
commuted
issues on both
sentences
sides of
people like that.
the issue, but whatever.
I get it.
But thanks for bringing it
We're
up.
not going to fix gun control.
We're not. Are we taking any questions
We're
from?
not.
We're taking any questions, or
I
are
don't see
we
any
wrapping up?
questions here.
Well,
Anybody that has
open it up to the
questions,
You got 20 seconds, guys.
No, we
We're wrapping up.
don't. If
Start
anybody-
typing.
If anybody watching or is following us in any form or fashion wants to throw out a comment or throw out a topic to quickly discuss, we would love to do so. Do we have any music to play while people are waiting? Can we get like a Taylor Swift peppy upbeat song going?
We will get automatically
so-
taken down.
Oh,
Yeah,
look, Josh
no,
is on.
exactly.
Josh, is there any question that you want to ask us before we get off? Josh is a friend of mine, a fraternity brother who is a ardent Trump supporter, but he is very intelligent. I like where he comes from.
Why
and-
did you have to classify that with a but? Like
But
he's
what?
a Trump supporter, but he's intelligent.
'Cause he's
what,
not-
What do you
'cause
think?
he's
What does
not-
that say you think about Trump supporters?
Oh, I think you all know what I think about Trump supporters. I'm just saying, whatever. Send us some questions. If not,
Complicity, the dictionary's word of the year, complicity.
there you go.
Trump supporters are complicit in the things that he does.
Unknowingly or knowingly,
All right,
and
well,
it reflects
I will
on them.
say next week
Yep.
we are going to take. If anyone has a question, we will take live Skype calls.
Cool.
Live Skype calls.
will they be
People are going to have
calling
to show their
into,
faces and take responsibility for the things they say.
No, I
No
mean,
hiding behind a
No,
keyboard.
no,
we can
we'll keep it anonymous.
We can do audio, but call in if you support
Elevator
Trump
music.
or you believe this tax bill is going to help you, or
Which
You're
Josh does. He
all
thinks this
guy.
is a big win for Trump. I don't know how you think it's a win for us.
Look, a win
It is a win for Trump.
It's a win. It doesn't matter what the implications are as long as it's a win. You know, it's just like you didn't win the popular vote, but you won the election.
Yeah.
Winning is everything.
All right, cool. So
Ask Charlie Sheen. He knows all about winning.
yeah, so I don't see
Is
any
that
questions
old yet?
coming in.
Nobody thinks it's old
So I
yet?
think we should wrap up.
I guess we could. Does anybody know a good rap to end the show?
Oh my
Nope.
God, you are on point today, Joe. I can't with you right
can't
now,
help
dude.
it.
I'm just gonna.
All right, Joe.
Yes.
Tell them where they can find.
Okay, they can find me at all this stuff right under here.
And for
Joseph
audio,
S. Oswald.
Joseph S. Oswald Twitter handle, the email Joseph S. Oswald at 11 at Gmail. If you want to send me something,
No nude
angry.
pics, okay?
No nude pics, no trolls, because I will
What
slay
if they're
thee.
good though?
I will slay thee.
Okay.
Hey, be
What?
careful with what you're saying. We're hot mic, all right? We don't need this coming back to us.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
see. I just noticed that I pointed way too high when I was telling people where
Yeah.
to find me. I should really be like pointing at the desk.
Jay.
All right, you guys can find me right here at J Martinez Jr. Twitter handle. Follow us also on the R Squared Network on Facebook and YouTube to watch the videos after we've posted them. And we also have a page on Facebook, so follow us there at the second
We need
page.
100 subscribers on YouTube to have our own URL.
Yeah, so help us out with that. And
Yeah.
and again,
Can you
just
tell
like
who the
follow...
social media director is over here?
So tune in every Saturday. We're gonna try to be on at 11 and
11-ish.
11-ish. Between 11 and 12.
Between
we'll
11
start,
and
but
12.
we'll always give you a couple minutes heads
yeah,
up.
and Steve, producer man, what do your
Hey,
weekly plug for your popular review movie review show?
Yes,
let everyone
yes.
know.
On the Real, we do a weekly Walking Dead recap show. Say that 3 times fast. That's our.
I can't.
And we do On the Real News, where we discuss the news of the week. And this week we're going to be talking about that goddamn amazing Avengers Infinity War trailer.
It was
And,
fucking awesome.
The shakeup over at Warner
I
Brothers
didn't
after
see it.
What?
the Justice League debacle.
Yep.
And this is something you guys may be interested in. All the Money in the World, the new trailer is out where they replaced Kevin Spacey with Christopher Plummer.
Okay.
Because he was
Yeah.
shot in 2 weeks, completely removed him from the film.
They reshot everything.
Reshot all of his scenes in
Wow.
2 weeks and kept the same release date.
Wow.
December
And Plummer
22nd.
at that age is still kicking like
We're
that.
Still kicking.
Wow.
And honestly, I think
Good
he
for
may-
him.
Skills.
He may be doing better because Kevin Spacey had a bunch of prosthetics on. But you got to watch to talk about that. Check us out. We will be on later today.
You have another show too, don't you?
We're working on something new, but that's,
Hey,
that's
Joe,
on
don't jump the gun,
that's
bro.
on-
Hey, listen,
Don't
that's
jump the gun.
Oh,
all
you are
teasers.
Michael Flynn over there.
Teasing. Teasing trailer.
Snitches get stitches, bro.
Get him in there.
Or pardons.
Let him know.
Snitches get stitches.
Yeah,
or
write me
pardons.
up a pardon.
All right,
motion.
folks. That is all. You guys want to say bye?
Yep. Thank you guys for tuning in. See you next week.
All right, well,
Have a good one.
bye.
Bye.
I know. I can see the steam coming off. So, computer state. EMP.
We kept that on.